Hi friends, and welcome back to Movies I Watched This Week. I know this lighting kind of looks like shit, but I gotta film this video and we're doing it now, or it would be never! So, thank you so much for being here. There's only 4 movies this week, so this should be a lot shorter than last week's video, but that was because we watched 10 movies and I had a lot to say. So I only watched 4, and one of them is Thunderbolts, which is still in theaters. You should totally go see it, aka the new Avengers. However, really exciting news was that last Monday I got to review it live on a podcast. So I'll put the link in the description, but here it is where you can hear all my thoughts about the movie. We'll brush over it gently, but I'm not going to talk about it in depth like I did on the podcast because I'm going to force you to watch it. Thank you so much. Now let's get on with the video. Read Dry Gin Martini, check out my website, blog, and watch my other YouTube videos. I love you so much. Let's go. I already lied. I watched 5 movies. First movie I watched was Final Destination 3 because I want to continue the franchise. I don't know why I thought there were going to be like 12 Final Destination movies. There's only 5. And I finished them. So we're just going to kind of talk about Final Destination as a whole. So first movie's great. The first movies of franchises are either like the staple piece that you go back to. Like when I think of Scream, I really only watched the first Scream. And then sometimes the first one in the franchise is kind of just like, wow, we really only went up from there. But I just really enjoyed the Final Destination franchise as a whole. That being said, the third one, I really enjoyed. That's the one that if you've ever seen on TikTok, specifically the scene with the roller coaster, that is the one that I thought was the first movie. Final Destination 3, 2006, directed by James Wong. This ride will be the death of you. High school senior Wendy's premonition of a deadly roller coaster ride saves her life, and a lucky few, but not from death itself, which seeks out those who escape their fate. So, they're getting in line for a roller coaster, and what I immediately clocked as weird was we have 2 couples, okay? Wendy and her man, and then the other girl and the guy from Luck of the Irish. What's his name? Kevin, I think. Okay, girl and guy, right? They're dating. This girl is like, I don't want to sit in the front, I can't see the tracks. That's Wendy. And her boyfriend's like, okay, but I want to sit in the front. And then this girl is like, I'll sit in the front too. And then Kevin goes and sits in the back. So we got Wendy and Kevin in the caboose, and then we got their partners up in the front. All right. I mean, you can already predict what's going to happen. So she has the entire premonition, like vision of everybody dying. And this one was just so much longer and so much more graphic and like suspenseful than the first 2 movies. And then they get off the roller coaster and her boyfriend's sitting in the front like, I need to get off, that's my girlfriend. And they're like, start the ride. So they start the ride and of course he dies. And I thought this one was really good, similar vibe, like the suspense is always so good. The death sequences are so long, but it's not long where you're like, let's get this over with. You're like, what crazy shit's about to happen? And then the final bit that I really enjoyed, spoiler alert, everybody dies. Because in the second one, if you remember from last video, we talked about there's the survivor from the first movie. God, I wish I had their names. Wouldn't that be helpful? Ellie Larder is the one survivor from the first movie who comes back into the second film. And I thought she was going to be kind of like this oracle that's throughout the franchise. And people go to her to be like, what's happening? But after watching the 5th and final Destination, I'm so glad they didn't do that, which we'll get into. But so, Tony Todd, however, who plays William, is the actor that is kind of sprinkled through every single movie. He's the coroner. And Mary Elizabeth Winstead plays Wendy. So the third film follows Wendy and her friends and like everybody dies off. But how it ends is they're in New York City on the subway. And she sees the other girl who was a survivor and she's like, what are you doing here? And then they kind of have like a moment where they're chatting and they're like, as long as Kevin's not with us, we should be okay. Because if all 3 of us are in one place, we're destined for death. Like it's just kind of all going to happen at once. So that's why they dispersed and separated, which I thought was a really interesting approach to escaping death, because what we've seen from the first 2 films is that they all tried to stay together, which recipe for disaster. It's like death could just come and get you all at once, where they decided to split up, and then in the end they're on the train and the train derails and they all die. I truthfully don't have that many memories about the film itself, other than because I watched them all together, so they all just kind of blur into this one piece. So we're just gonna go right into the next Final Destination, which was the Final Destination. Because I'm sitting there being like, is this like Fast and Furious, how it's the Fast and the Furious, Too Fast, Too Furious, Fast and Furious, Fast 4, Fast 5, like, they switch up the names. But the reason they did this was because Final Destination, that came out in 2009, directed by David R. Ellis, was supposed to be the final installment of the Final Destination franchise. So if you watch that movie with that knowledge and you see how it ends, you're like, wow, that sucked. That was a really crappy ending for rounding out this franchise. So I'm so glad that they came back with the fifth one, obviously, because the fourth one takes place at a racetrack. So the first one, we have the plane. The second one, we have the pile up on the thruway with the logs that like causes this crazy accident. The third one, you have the roller coaster. The fourth one, they're at a racetrack. So Final Destination, 2009, directed by David R. Ellis. Rest in pieces. A horrifying premonition saves a young man and his friends from death during a racetrack accident, but terrible fate awaits them nonetheless. So this one, we have Bobby Campo, who plays Nick, our main guy. Then we have Lori, played by Chantel Van Santen. And once again, the characters kind of blurred together for me because I'm trying to memorize like all of the different movies and how they flow into each other. So this one starts, they're at a racetrack, and the premonition is one of the, oil spills over, and then a car slips on it, and then I believe some kind of electrical fire or something happens that the race car flips into the stands, crushing a bunch of people, and then there's this whole, like, explosion, collapse of the building, and all those people die, and then the people that get out spend majority of the rest of the movie trying to figure out what's happening, but they do reference like, oh, this has happened before, but it's not like we saw in the second movie. And truthfully, this one felt so different because they altered the opening credits and the final. It was very like that skeletal, I don't know, super SFX, like, poorly done. I think they spent so much time making the kills and the death, like, really bloody and gory and graphic with special effects because they forgot about bones. There's a part where she gets a rock thrown through her face, and there's, like, it's just blood and guts. There's no, like, bone or cartilage or anything, which I get because, I mean, it looks grosser. But there's another part where somebody gets, like, chopped in half and there's no ribs. I'm like, all right, guys. She doesn't have ribs? Seriously? So the fourth one just felt like they spent so much time on the graphics and the special effects. And you can tell because it's 2009. Anyway, the plot just fell through. Like, it wasn't memorable to me, and the ending was lame. A truck comes and drives through the place. So, whoa. Let me rewind. So they're at the movie theater, which fire in a movie theater, talk about biggest fear. So they're at a movie theater, and the one girl gets this feeling. She's like, we need to leave. Something's wrong. Oh my God. They start to get, like, you know how right before somebody's about to die, all of these clues happen? That happened to me the other day. I can't say what it was, but something similar happened, and I was like, am I in Final Destination? Like, am I about to die? Okay, quick setup change. Anyway. So they're in the movie theater, and the main guy goes to try and put out the fire in this back room, and all of this stuff keeps happening. The fire keeps happening. There is something, I think that was kind of like a cop-out in all the movies because there's so many electrical fires or just things that would happen, and then they blow up in flames, and it's like, really? But so there's going to be a fire in the movie theater, and the guy ends up saving the day. But the way he does it is, like, his arm gets nailed to a wall. And I was watching this with my dad, and he was like, why doesn't he just rip his arm out of the wall? Like, dun, 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 nail gun to the wall. Grace of God, he ended up getting the sprinklers to go on, and it, like, saved the day. So then you think everybody's safe. And he's walking through, like, the town square or whatever, and there's some scaffolding, and he goes, oh, you guys should secure that. It's kind of loose, you know, gotta be safe, with a cast on his arm. And then he goes into this cafe with the two other girls, the 3 final survivors, and a semi-truck comes and drives through, and they all die, and it cuts to credits, and it's the sick, like, rock music in the final credits. But that would have been that's a great ending, because I know there's a fifth. So if I watched that in theaters in 2009 and was like, this is the very last Final Destination movie, I'd be like, are you fucking kidding me? So that's the fourth one. So then I was like, thank God there's a fifth, because damn, what a disappointment. So out of the first four, if we were alive, well, I was alive at that time, but if I was actively watching Final Destination movies as they were coming out, I would have been one, disappointed. Also, I would have said, I really liked the second one more than the first one, honestly. I think the first one's so good because it's the first and the concept is just so awesome. And it really allows for so much horror to happen because truly you could die really any way. Do you remember the game 1,000 Ways to Die or Dumb Ways to Die? I used to watch the show 1,000 Ways to Die, and I always think about the guy who ate the pool ball. So then I watched the fifth one, and the fifth one kind of reminded me of New Moon to Eclipse, Eclipse to Breaking Dawn, and how there was serious budget increase. Because this film, if I comp the cinematography style to something of Final Destination 5, it would probably be The Social Network. Death is just omnipresent as ever and is unleashed after one man's premonition saves a group of coworkers from a terrifying suspension bridge collapse. But this group of unsuspecting souls was never supposed to survive, and in a terrifying race against time, the ill-fated group frantically tries to discover a way to escape death's sinister agenda. So this group of interns, coworkers, they work at some paper place. Honestly, doesn't matter. I don't really care. And they're going on a work retreat. They're on this like Greyhound bus or like a giant bus, whatever, and he has this premonition that all of this crazy stuff's gonna happen. The bus is gonna fall off the bridge, one of the suspension things gonna break, the bridge is gonna collapse, and everybody's gonna die. And so he's like, everybody get off the bus. And so half of them, of course, get off and the rest of them die. And then what starts happening is everybody starts dying in the order that they saw in his premonition. In the second movie, they died in reverse order. In the third and fourth, I don't remember. Nicholas D'Augusto plays Sam. Emma Bell plays Molly. So Peter, all these people, they're like this whole group of friends, whatever. And so Peter, played by Miles Fisher. And what's really great is that compared to the other movies where they're working together to try and escape death, and then in the fourth one, they obviously or the third one, they separate so they can escape death. But everybody kind of had a plan of working together in some capacity to avoid death. In this fifth and final movie, Sam and Molly just kind of go on their way and are like, we're gonna just kind of save ourselves. And though we care about you other people, Peter especially goes crazy because Candace, his girlfriend, dies. And it sends him on a spiral. We also get to go to like the funerals, which didn't happen since the second or third one with the tanning beds. They all blur together. I did horrible research for these, just letting you know. But I loved the fifth one so much. And what's so amazing is that there's this epic scene that reminded me so much of Novocaine, where Peter and Sam are fighting in the kitchen, trying to kill each other, because in this movie specifically, when they meet the coroner, he kind of like gives them a sign like, death doesn't like to be cheated, and it's going to be coming for each and every one of you. And so in the second movie, they thought the way that they could escape death was by having new life. So AJ Cook's character dies, gets resuscitated, and they think they broke the cycle. Obviously, they didn't, because moments later, Mickey Milkovich is blown up by the grill. But there's always kind of a plan of like, okay, well, to avoid death, we have to do this. And in this movie, the way that they kind of interpret it is, I have to take somebody else's life, somebody that's I'm about to die, put somebody else in that place so they die, and then my soul is safe, and that person took my place. So that's kind of the theme that goes through, and that's why Peter goes so crazy, is he's like, I have to murder somebody, and I'm going to murder somebody so I'm safe, because I don't want to die. What's so awesome about this movie, and this is a spoiler, but my jaw was on the floor, and it was so amazing, and it made me really appreciate this is how you end a franchise, because I don't believe that it can always be cyclical and take you back to the beginning, but I think it's really nice when the overarching story brings you back to like where you started, in a sense. It doesn't need to take us directly back to the beginning, but kind of round out that character arc. So it ends with Sam and Molly boarding a flight, and they're like, everybody's dead, like we've made it, we're safe now. And I'm telling you, it did not cross my mind. They're boarding the plane, and I'm like, yeah, they made it. Like, I think it would be really great if it ended with them making it. No, because you look over and it's the guy from the very first movie, Evan Sawa, who plays Alex. You see him being dragged off the plane, and then you realize, oh my God, oh my God, they're about to all die. And so that was actually the start. The fifth and final installment of the Final Destination franchise until next week when Final Destination Bloodlines comes out. You think that's the end of the franchise, but it's actually the start. So it's this beautiful, like, cyclical thing where you could watch it, like, you could really pick up from anywhere. It's so good, which actually then makes sense because the fifth one would be the first one, so the fourth one would be the last one. So that does make sense as that being the Final Destination now. That's all turning in my head. However, I still don't like the ending of them all dying in the fourth one. So my ratings for the Final Destination movies are as follow, and this is kind of the ranking I was talking about in the last video because I happened to watch them all at the same time. But these are all my ratings. Here it is. Take it in. I'll put it on the screen for you. Okay, in between that, I saw Thunderbolts in theaters last Thursday when it came out, okay? I fucking loved this movie, and I had the amazing privilege of being on Trainwreck Sports live stream to talk about it. So, here's a picture from that. And the link is in the description below for you to watch it. It's like 40 minutes where we talk about the movie, but I'm just going to give you my key takeaways. Because I wrote like a bulleted list so that we could rapid fire through this because you know I love to talk. Thunderbolts 2025, directed by Jake Schreier. If that sounds familiar to you, it's because he also directed Paper Towns and Beef. I thought Louis Pullman stole the show. Such an incredible actor. Okay, this is what I wrote that I didn't say in the live stream that I wish I did. Bob had a praise kink 100%, and Julia Louis-Dreyfus's character was absolutely a dom. Valentina is a dominatrix or something, like she was giving dominatrix to his praise kink because he needed praise and all of that stuff to use his powers, which I thought was hilarious. The comps of this movie, Rise of the Guardians and the Shame Wizard episode of Big Mouth, and I'll put pictures up for you so you know what I'm talking about. Century, when he becomes the Void and he cascades the void of darkness all over the city, and then these people get taken into the void. All I could think of was when Night or Darkness in Rise of the Guardians did the same thing to the planet, and that's why the Easter Bunny and Santa and the Tooth Fairy and the Sandman, everybody had to work together to stop him. And then the Shame Wizard was because he's like floating in the sky, and when he's doing the void, he's putting all of these people in their darkest memories, forcing them to like get out of it. And it just reminded me of the Shame Wizard. Getting to the root of the evil, which is all of these stories in some way kind of touch on mental health or depression or the effects of what being a superhero does to these people, like the emotional toll it takes on them. And this was the first movie where we actually acknowledge that beyond like, okay, they're coping a little differently. Like they actually talk about depression and not being able to escape your past, which is the theme that transcends the entire film that they did so beautifully. The sound design is the emotional catalyst of the film. It's so layered. I love action movies specifically, and animation. You can catch this as well. But there's dialogue, score, and then there's all of that Foley happening as well that just like really builds the soundscape. Like when the buildings are crumbling, you can hear the crumbling, you can hear the dust. It's like all of these isolated sounds blended together to create such a feeling where your hair stands up on your back. It's so amazing. You have created and built worlds and characters from nothing, okay? These comic books. And then you use those comic books from decades ago, make them contemporary, and put them on a platform where they exist in modern day and kind of expose the world we live in. I'd say these films are extremely political, especially when you're talking about, you know, an evil person recruiting bad guys to save the planet and be the new face of the Avengers and all of this stuff. Like, these films are so political, and they do such a brilliant job of mimicking society and what's going on now. I don't think they do that without consciousness, obviously. There's no lull period. Like, the breaths in between a big scene and a big scene where you'd kind of have this lull, it's not a lull. It like swings you from here to here in such a way where they pack everything in with such concise dialogue. The shots are so like, the scenes feel long, but they're so short if you think about them in the grand scheme of like the film's pacing. It's amazing. Like, this film truly was a masterclass in pacing, because if you go through every single thing that happens and you're like, all that happens in 2 hours. And overall was 5 out of 5. I loved it, especially the praise king part. And something that I found really interesting that I watched in a video from Tepper was that Jake Schreier himself said the design of the Void was based on America's decision to use a nuclear bomb on Hiroshima because the damage of that is irreversible, and the people and the cities who have been affected by that, obviously irreversible. So when you see the first girl get taken into the Void in the movie, it literally shook the entire theater because you're like, what the fuck just happened? Like, we've seen horror and terror and superpowers and crazy shit happening all across the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That felt distinctively different. And it was such a choice the way that they did it. And the sound design of that too, like, it was literally like a... It's just so rich. It was so amazing. I love Sebastian Stan. I love Florence Pugh. I love David Harbour. I love everybody else whose names I'm not remembering because, of course, it also reminded me, like, John Tucker Must Die because all of these people who don't like each other have to get together to defeat a similar cause, you know? So this movie is certified for the girls. This movie does pass the Bechdel test as well. And I loved it. And I would really appreciate if you would maybe watch the live stream where I get to talk about it on a platform because that was really cool and exciting for me. So I went to the movie theater with my sister. It was a packed house, which is always my favorite. I just think there's something so exciting, especially about an action movie. But when I saw Novocaine, same thing. I went to the AMC and the theater was jam-packed. It creates like a buzzing energy and it just makes seeing the movie so much more fun. That being said, when I go see a drama or a sad romance movie with one of my favorite actors, I want to be alone. This is my cup. And yes, of course, I requested Bucky Barnes. I wasn't going to buy it if they didn't have him, so. Thunderbolts, The New Avengers, in theaters now. Go check it out. It's fucking brilliant. Last and final movie I watched was a surprise choice. I decided that I was just going to go on Tubi and pick a random flick like I do. But I usually, when I say pick a random flick, it's like one that I've been waiting to watch for a long time. Or like something where I already know there's a romantic love scene. Or there's something that I saw online where I'm like, okay, I guess I'll finally watch this. This was literally just because I saw the title, saw Kirsten Dunst and Michelle Williams, and was like, what the is this? So I watched Dick, 1999, directed by Andrew Fleming. And this movie is absolutely fucking hysterical. It's so satirical. It's just so funny. So, he was tricky. They were better. Two high school girls wander off during a class trip to the White House to meet the president, Richard Nixon. They become the official dog walkers for Nixon's dog Checkers and become his secret advisor during the Watergate scandal. I rated this movie 4 stars. I just thought it was so absolutely funny. And having, like, knowing the trajectory of Michelle Williams and Kirsten Dunst's career is so funny watching this. From the moment it started, I was giggling hysterically in my bedroom. So these two girls live together. And they're, like, best friends. And they live in the Watergate building, if I have that correct. I could be wrong. We know that I'm wrong a lot of the time. And that's okay because I'm human. But so they're in the Watergate building because they're trying to, like, sneak out and do something. And they run into this guy, which later in the film, you realize it's President Nixon. Obviously, the Watergate scandal's in the log line. It's going to be prevalent in the film. So they kind of just, like, in a series of happenstance, like, meet the president. Nobody believes them that they met the president. And so on the school trip, like, they go to the White House and the teacher's like, okay, so we're going to have lunch at McDonald's and then we're going to go back to school. And because they took so long waiting and talking to the president and nobody believed them, they're like, we're not getting McDonald's anymore. And it's just, everything about this film was so funny to me. And the costume design is great. They're just these two, like, dorky best friend girls that nobody likes and everybody makes fun of, which is so crazy because it's Michelle Williams and Kirsten Dunst. But also a huge plot point is that Michelle plays Arlene and Kirsten plays Betsy. And Arlene, as the story progresses, she has, like, curly hair and glasses. And then as the film goes on, she straightens her hair. She gets contacts. She starts dressing more trendy because she's in love with the president and she thinks it's going to be reciprocal. And there's a part where she opens a binder and she's going through, she's like, this is our wedding. And this is what it would look like when we're together at the White House. And it reminded me of in Starstruck when the girl opens the book and she's like, these are all of the places that Sterling Knight's character goes to, because I can't remember the name of his character in the movie. It was just really good and really fun, and it was so, honestly, so random. Iowa Debris herself watched it, and it's listed on her Letterboxd, so there you go. It's just so hilarious because the guy who plays Richard Nixon, Dan Hedaya, is the father from Clueless. So the cast is jam-packed with comedians. Will Ferrell is in it. There's an anonymous source that the girls go by, Deep Throat, so that they can give information about Watergate to the press. And it is just like hilarious satire about President Nixon and the White House. And it's just these two girls who walked in to the wrong room, but they happen to be in the right place at the right time. And I just love these movies. It was literally by chance that I found it. I probably never would watch this if I didn't see the word dick on my computer, and I was like, what is that? And I didn't even read the log line. I just pressed play, and then I looked it up after. I rated this 4 stars. I think it's a really good laugh. I think it's a really cute, like, girl comedy if you're looking for something like that. It kind of reminded me of Drop Dead Gorgeous, how it's just so ridiculously dry humor, so funny, and it's just these beautiful girls doing dumb shit, and it's just good shit. Okay? Movies are meant to be fun, and this one was, so you should go watch it. Movies I watched this week, not a lot, but a good amount compared to last week's when we had, an hour-long video? I don't know what you prefer. You guys don't let me know. That being said, thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you feel like it, or don't. I can't really control what you do or when. Read my blog. New one came out on Monday. Watch last week's video. Check out Dry Gin Martini's magazine, www.dryginmartini.com, and then you can have all the answers to all of your wonderful questions. And follow my Instagram. I never plugged that, but I'm kind of funny on there sometimes. And Rachel Sennett saw my Instagram story a week ago. Yeah, so we're kind of moving up in the world. As I always say, watch more movies together, make more movies together. Isn't that the dream? It's mine. Till next time, stay flirty, stay thirsty, and stay up to date on what movies are coming out, because On Swift Horses is in theaters right now. I unfortunately don't have time to go see it unless I go tomorrow after work, which I might, honestly, because I'm also rewatching Normal People, and I literally had to turn it off because it was the part where Connell's friend dies, and he's in therapy, like, talking about his feelings, and it was 11:30 p.m., and I'm watching this, and I start crying, and I closed it. I was like, I'm supposed to giggle before bed, not cry. Stay flirty, stay thirsty, and I will see you soon. Bye, chin chin.